When it comes to the characters in Five Nights at Freddy's, especially those related to the creation of Freddy's in-game, we've had a few names and very few details. William Afton has always been the most important character in FNAF lore. We know him too well, his habits, his behaviors, his extensive history. In comparison, his business partner Henry, the person to defeat Afton and all of his cronies in Pizzeria Simulator, the man to be majorly related to the puppet and become a major focus in the trilogy novels, even stepping in place of the main character Michael Afton to become the focus of the spotlight, has actually had very little time devoted to him in the games. 2 speeches in Pizzeria Simulator, a half of a name drop, a few lines in the same game, and a somewhat cut cameo in Into the Pit. Now, the book trilogy couldn't get enough of Henry, but despite his importance, he had really that one game, a shred of what William Afton got. And then here comes Secret of the Mimic, and suddenly we have a third thrown in the mix. Another face from the distant past involved in the building of Freddy's business, in making some of the characters in suits, and having had a direct hand in creating the current main threat for the franchise, the Mimic. And this man is Edwin Murray. Edwin Murray isn't just a name in a book or a character to be tacked onto the lore. He is an example of exactly how one may sabotage themselves as eagerly as they may open themselves up to be tampered with. A trusting man with a wide imagination but no sense for business, and how it all backfired so dramatically. And yes, that stint about Henry's importance to the greater story will be of greater importance to this video's narrative later on, so keep that in the back of your mind as we delve into the history of Edwin Murray. But let's get started from the top. Edwin Murray is an inventor/entrepreneur who ran a business known as Murray's Costume Manor, one built out of a factory and an existing business of vacuum cleaner manufacturing which he inherited from his late father. But Edwin didn't just build costumes. Him and his many employees took full advantage of the big factory to fabricate mascots and also toys, foodstuff, and appliances. Many of the toys and food being through licensed brands that Murray worked with, and many of the appliances being inventions that Edwin Murray made himself. The man even invented recycling, though as we will go over later, this might not actually be the case. But the most important projects Edwin worked on was his contract or contracts with Fredbear's Family Diner and Fazbear Entertainment, and his creation of the titular Mimic. Needless to say, between it, Will, Henry, and many of the other characters he had a hand in making, Edwin was a big part of the creation of the Freddy's brand both in-universe and in a meta sense. He's very wrapped up in the history, and as such, we will have to piece the puzzle of his past together and see the picture he stenciled on it. But before I continue, there's one thing I should make clear. Before Secret of the Mimic came out, Edwin Murray was featured as a character in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, and his personality and backstory in those books is very different. I will be covering Book Murray later and will give my opinions on his characterization and the changes between both at that point. But moving on. A brief description of Edwin's appearance. He's got brown hair, wears thick bookish glasses, and usually wears a bow tie, kind of his trademark, even becoming part of the MCM logo. Or maybe he started wearing one because of the MCM logo. This is what he looks like. But what is Edwin like? Now on to his personality, which to my surprise was a lot deeper than one might read at first glance. The number one character trait that is shown off throughout the game is Edwin's ambition. He is constantly reaching for higher goals and pushing technology to its limits, and not strictly for profit. In fact, often Edwin will overcomplicate existing designs in a way that won't necessarily benefit him just because he has an idea. He's a very good idea man, but he lacks some of the restraint to keep those lofty dreams in check, a job usually delegated to his wife, Fiona. In one family video, he is shown suddenly getting struck with an amazing idea, and then being so wrapped up in it that he neglects his family and prior obligations, including his work, as he'll often choose a new project over fixing an old one, choosing to take on numerous projects and lose interest in them.
Ed, you're not going to want to hear this, but there's a lot of grumbling on the work floor. You have a lot of new ideas and new projects coming in, but the staff can't keep up with all your changes. Your creative energy is amazing, and I love you for it. But I think you need to step back a little and focus on one project at a time.
This lack of attention is a big problem because often his contraptions will have hiccups that Edwin is intelligent enough to fix, but will put it aside and ignore it, such as the elevator problem, which he flat out ignores. But the best example is the Springlock suit water problem. When Fiona reports that a suit almost snapped shut due to soda being poured on it, Springlock suits are notorious for being dangerous and failing when they get wet. But Edwin actually fixes the problem. All it took was Fiona to ask him, and then he did it. It's a general aloofness it is. Edwin often wants to send messages through the helpers and hide away working, distracting himself from his workers and talking through the ones closest to him, such as Fiona and Milton, a higher-up worker who tends to deliver his messages. Even though he loves Fiona, he shows a surprising amount of apathy, like towards her death. And he is very distant from his son David, who he clearly loves, but often chooses work instead of spending time with.
Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise.
However, in a shocking turn of events, there are plenty of clues here and there that indicate that Edwin, while being so secluded and detached, is actually a very lonely person. Many of his basic appliances are built with faces, and many of their ads mention friendship. Hug your clothing rack, befriend your Cleanovac. Your coffee machine learns and replicates your favorite latte. Between that and the friendly-looking animatronics, some of them built to be workers instead of mascots to sell off, it's clear Edwin is using his own creations to replace the friends he doesn't have, to fill a hole in his heart. It's possible that Edwin was very secluded in his childhood. He seemed to have a somewhat strained relationship with his father. Not abusive, but you can definitely feel that there was some sort of distance. And we know that his house on the hill, secluded from all but the factory, was the family home that his parents built and was likely where he grew up. Not around many other kids. This is something that rubs off on his son David, as we can occasionally hear a line of his echoed by either his ghost or the mimic, saying, "You're my only friend," to the mimic. Now, Edwin doesn't necessarily acknowledge this on any front. I mean him making friends and David. He now has the ability to make friends, and he does. With his business partners, Henry and William, which leads to him losing his own company by being too trusting of their, William's, intentions. But he chooses not to be more friendly with his employees. You can be friends with your employees as long as you're still capable of being the boss, but he chooses full separation. Perhaps something taught to him by his father, as in one of his audio logs he mentions that his father was right and everyone was out to get him.
Edwin, never forget. They're behind it. Don't trust them. Never tell them. They want to destroy you. Dad was right.
There is another facet of Edwin's self-image too, and that's how highly he thinks of himself. While originally being unsure of himself, as shown when he pitches his invention to Fiona, once he overtook the company, Edwin started to get this sort of high opinion of himself and a degree of defensiveness about what he makes.
And that was my patented Demotronic welcome show. Amazing, if I do say so myself.
He never overtly says, "I'm great. I'm the best." But things such as being unwilling to take any suggestions and shutting them down instantly paint a picture. Why don't we do sport mascots? What have sports ever done for me? And while this could and likely was after his life went downhill, his blunt and blatant disregard shows through elsewhere. Like in his misspelling of the mycelium men, where he basically shrugs it off as though it's a good thing. No, it's great, it's fine, it's not a mistake, it was totally good. He's told Party Time Chica is too creepy, and while we don't know his reaction, he doesn't change the hideous design, despite the fact that it doesn't look anything like Fiona's designs, which he touts so highly. He doesn't fix his old inventions, he doesn't want to change anything, the only exception being the Fazbear project, where he had a very good reason for not wanting to switch up the deal in the final hour. Then there's the Dolly introduction performance, during which Edwin mentions that he invented recycling and that it'll change the world, that he's a genius. Now in his defense, this is clearly just a cutesy jokey thing. and he has to play himself up for the investors. This is not a big deal. But do I think he specifically created recycling? No, I don't. So, recycling is a thing that became big in the 70s, but yes, it existed beforehand, and I think that's the case here too. Seeing Edwin's general behavior, I think he's claiming a little more ownership than he actually put in, using the idea and expanding on it, and because he did, thinking that he can claim that he was the one who did all of it. Because I think it would be very in character for Edwin to say something like, well, nobody really recycled until I brought it into the mainstream. With my new patented Murray technology, I made it easier than ever, so now everyone knows what recycling is. I could have practically named it myself. Edwin does seem to have a bit of an ego, though this aspect clearly comes from a place of vulnerability. In private, when he inherited the company, Edwin was shown to doubt himself, and Fiona was the only one who could reach him. He doesn't think he's good enough. He thinks his inventions are great, brilliant, and they must be seen, but that they aren't good enough. And I believe that's why he struggles to acknowledge their faults. This is all a way to protect himself. I wouldn't be shocked if Edwin grew up under a father who didn't really understand or appreciate his early inventions, and as such needs to build himself up to keep going. Self-conscious people are often framed as being shy and meek, but that's not always the case. People are complicated. Sometimes people with a low self-esteem might overcompensate in other ways. I'm going to say a name here. I'm going to say it. Peggy Hill. If you know who Peggy Hill is, you know what I'm getting at. If you don't, Peggy Hill is a character from King of the Hill, the wife of Hank Hill. She's very full of herself, thinking highly of herself and making herself a self-proclaimed expert on things she knows nothing about. However, it is shown time and time again that this stems from a place of self-consciousness. Now, Peggy Hill can be downright insufferable, and Edwin is nowhere near that level of haughtiness. But that may explain his, detachment from his employees. We'll get deeper into that aspect later, but despite his clear loneliness, he didn't seem to show much empathy or concern about his staff, or what anyone else thought. And this was even before Fiona's death, as he would often ignore their complaints and problems, and suggestions too, like I said, often dismissing them briskly, with the only exception being Fiona, who he does go out of his way to appease. Because he's listening to her, but the employees are just background noise, and this causes plenty of friction later. Edwin is a far cry from the early FNAF characters, those with few lines and cookie-cutter goals, since we don't really get to hear what they want. He is very filled out, and that's only going to become more apparent as I get into the history and relationships. So without further ado, let's start the history lesson. Edwin's early life has some known details and a lot of subtext. He lived in the big mansion his parents built up on the hill beside the factory, and there, at some age, he built his first invention, the vacuum pet, the pre-Cleanovac. Another creation with friendly eyes on it, likely to make up for his lack of friends. And made vacuum inspired to go with his father's business, perhaps to appease to him. But Edwin's relationship to his father was clearly a little rocky. Yes, his father did pass the factory on to his son, but Edwin's unsureness in his own inventions and taking over the factory suggests that his dad might have not been too supportive. Edwin likely didn't have many friends or much support in his interests, until one day he met a puppeteer named Fiona.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What for? I don't even know you. I'm brand new here. Let's start again. I'm Fiona, and you are?
Edwin Murray. This is my dad's place. But that doesn't matter. I heard you were a puppeteer, and I wanted to record your voice.
Oh, well, yes, I used to be.
Well, that's great. Do you mind if I record you for a test?
So, you want to record me with that? What is it?
It's a new type of audio cassette recorder.
I've never seen one like that before.
I made it. It's part of this new system I'm working on. Just speak into the microphone and it'll be sent to me like a work memo. The message will be recorded on a tape drive so that I can listen to it when I get back to my desk on the other side of the building.
Oh, that's incredible. What do you call it?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought of a name yet.
Well, how would you describe it in one word?
I guess I would have to say helpful. Yeah, at its core, it is helpful.
That's a great name, and I would be delighted to help. What kind of voice should I do?
Needless to say, Edwin and Fiona hit it off right away, and it wasn't too long until they were married. I don't recall if it was said whether the two married before or after he inherited the factory, but assume it happened around the same time. After Edwin Sr.'s death, and we only know his name through the file, so this might not be his official name anymore, the factory was passed on to Edwin, who, at Fiona's encouragement, decided to switch from vacuums to costumes, trinkets, and inventions galore. This turned out to be an excellent decision as profits skyrocketed.
Ed, honey, how are you holding up? I just heard the news.
I don't know. This is all so much. He's gone. He's gone, and now everyone is asking me what to do? And I don't know anything. I can't run a company. I'm not ready. I can't fill his shoes. He knew it. Everyone knew it. The company is going to collapse, and they're all going to hate me.
Ed, you'll figure it out. Just take a deep breath. It's your company now. Your dad believed in you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left it to you.
I guess so.
If you could change anything you wanted, what would it be?
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
Fiona was a good influence on Edwin. Not only did she encourage him, but she was the grounding force in keeping him on the right track with finishing projects and hearing out the employees. If Edwin was the creative mind, Fiona was the heart, and together, the business was a massive success. That being said, while Edwin no doubt loved her with all of his heart, their marriage had some hiccups. Yes, they did seem to complete each other, but Edwin could be very distant. Remember earlier when I mentioned him having a sudden idea and pulling himself away from anything he's involved with to tackle the idea? Well, we actually see this in one of his home movies, during which he wanders out of his son's, I believe, second birthday party, and Fiona has to come upstairs and encourage him to come back.
Edwin! Ed! Get out here! You're missing it!
Just give me a minute. I had the best idea.
Okay,
This is the one. Bigger than the Cleanovac.
That's great, honey, but you're missing the party.
David's 2 years old. He won't remember a thing.
That's not the point. We have guests.
Besides, he's got plenty more birthdays. Next year will be even better.
Well, hurry up. We're doing the cake in 5 minutes, with or without you.
Yeah.
Which he even seems very reluctant to do. She even expresses that she dislikes messaging through the helpfuls, but has to as sometimes she can't even reach Edwin.
Ed, I hate talking to you through this stupid bear, but it's hard to reach you otherwise.
Ironically, Edwin is not aware of this to the point that he proposed through a Mr. Helpful.
Fiona, surprise, it's me, Edwin. This might be a little awkward, but I've got something very important to ask you. Okay? Here goes. We've known each other for how long now? I don't remember your start date off the top of my head, but it's been a few. Okay, dummy, start over. Oh, come on. Rewind not working. Oh, well, keep going. Just, Fiona, ignore that part. Anyway, you're the most amazing artist and creator I've ever been lucky enough to employ. We just click in every way. I hope you feel the same. You know, MCM wouldn't be this successful without you. You've become the heart of this company, and I want to share it with you. And you're also really pretty, like asymmetrical pretty. I should have led with that. And you're fun and funny. Not a lot of things really make me happy, but you do. And you make the best puppets. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I can't think of a future without you. I want to keep making magic and sharing our creations with the world forever. So, will you marry me? Please? I love you.
But despite all of this, they did seem pretty happy. Fiona was very patient and loving. She was truly the one person in Edwin's life who he could count on. But it wasn't long after this that he met two new friends, assumedly. And those friends were business partners, William and Henry, who were working with Fazbear Entertainment, or owning it, perhaps. We know this because Edwin refers to them as friends, or so-called friends, in his audio log.
What the hell was that? They treat me like some contractor to crack a whip at. Oh, Fiona was right. They don't think of me as a friend anymore. This is the last project I ever do for them.
And later on, William, or W.A., reaches out to Edwin directly, but I don't want to get too far ahead. They seem to have been on good terms, at the beginning at least, and Edwin entered a contract with Fazbear Entertainment to begin working on various projects for them, as he refers to the Big Fazbear project as the last project I'll do with them. It's likely that he worked on others as well, such as, I believe, the Monty Parade float and the mascot suits. The Fazbear project was a huge undertaking, however. Edwin was tasked with building Springlock suits, which he assumedly had been building them for a while, but also animatronics of characters Freddy, Chica, Bonnie, and Foxy, and even built a prototype pizzeria in the research and development department downstairs. On the Springlock suit aspect, Murray seemed to be one of Will and Henry's primary manufacturers, which makes sense since at this point Fazbear Entertainment was a franchise with likely multiple locations. Henry and Will themselves couldn't make all of the needed suits alone. Now originally, Edwin's suits matched Fazbear's own, meaning they were highly dangerous, able to set off easily with water, leading to a Springlock failure, which Edwin prepared for by equipping his service hospital with a scoop, steam clean, and bleach regimen to get rid of any unwanted organic matter. Edwin, as usual, was pretty indifferent to the risk. Until Fiona witnessed one of her costumers, Vic, almost get his hand chopped off after spilling some soda on one of the costumes. She reported it to Edwin and asked him to fix it, and he did. In one of his logs, he reports that he fixed his Springlock suit so water was no longer a problem. He had the means to do it the whole time. It was just Fiona who managed to finally get him to do it. Through, as far as we know, one message. This led to Edwin having the safer Springlock suits, though due to situations, these never became the standard suit in use. Though once again, we can see how Fiona was the one standing up for the workers and successfully doing so. It's easy to assume that she was likely looked up to by those workers as the one who was on their side. All Edwin had to do was follow her requests, and all was well. But it couldn't last. During one of the fall fests, Fiona got a foreboding feeling and decided to go help the Murray's crew who went to the festival to help or monitor as something was being installed. As she couldn't get a hold of Edwin, she left him a message, left David with a babysitter, and went to Fall Fest.
Ed, I hope this message reaches you as soon as you get a break. I have to go help the Fall Fest crew, just for a few days until the installation is finished. It's hard to explain. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong. Just in case. Trisha will babysit David while I'm gone. I love you both, and I'll be back next week.
It makes you wonder, if Fiona had been able to speak with Edwin, would he have convinced her not to go? Would he have offered to go with her? Who knows? All we know is that something went terribly wrong. From various hints, the burned statues and buildings in Moon.exe, the burned carousel in Help Wanted 2, the carousel horse head in Edwin's office, and countless little hints and suggestions all over the place. It's most likely that Fiona got caught in a fire at Fall Fest and passed away, leaving behind Edwin and David.
Oh, why did you go? You weren't even supposed to be there. You were supposed to be here with me and David. Oh, how am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone? How am I supposed to raise a kid on my own? His life is ruined. My life is ruined.
Despite how detached Edwin may sound, I do believe he was devastated. It's clear that he truly loved Fiona in a way he loved nobody else. Even if it was his own way, she was his everything. She was his sun. and he couldn't live without her. Then one day, Edwin heard Fiona through a radio.
Recording? Test. Levels are good. This is where I heard it. It's her or someone that sounds like her. Set frequency to 4625. Hello? Hello? Is anyone there? Over. Say something. It's me, Edwin. Over.
Oh, that's good, honey, but I'm from the party.
Was this the ghost of Fiona? Well, maybe, but notably, it is only repeating what she said once. This could be a residual haunting. Now, a residual haunting is described by Wikipedia as being a haunted in which a specter repeats a loop of its past with no semblance of intelligence or consciousness. Basically, it's not an intelligent ghost reaching out from beyond the grave, but instead the emotions of a traumatic event lingering in an area and causing the events to repeat. It is compared to like a looping videotape or a recording replaying over and over. Signs include apparitions that look like moving pictures, moving in the same area, repeating the same actions. They do not interact with people. Also, sounds such as voices, noises or footsteps, and apparently high humidity, but this is a dark, dank factory, that's a given. This isn't just what Edwin picks up on either, but what we witness in Secret of the Mimic, where Arnold occasionally walks through areas and hears what sounds like the Mimic echoing phrases that Edwin, Fiona, and David said in the past. And if the Mimic was built off of this frequency, this residual haunting, that explains this phenomenon. Or a counter-argument. Edwin's many creations sort of hijacked this frequency and this line, which was on a film roll. It was picked up and parroted by something, and then Edwin heard it and assumed it was the real Fiona, and as such clung to that false mimic. An idea that, surprisingly, would hold a significant amount of irony weight if it was true. But hearing this frequency, Edwin became determined that he could bring Fiona back, and that's when he built a mimic program and an endoskeleton body for it. The Mimic program, also known as M1 or later F10-N4, so I don't have to say that name, I'll just be emphasizing Fiona whenever I mention it. Now, the M1 and M2 body debate is very complicated, and it boils down to either this. Either M1 and M2 are the same body but different programs, after Edwin uploaded M1 into a new body, or there are two identical mimic bodies and one of them just disappeared. I don't know, and I'm not getting into it. Moving on. Though, it should be known that Fiona says the employees cannot know about her, but they do end up seeing the mimic endo body as it's literally at David's birthday party, and employees mention Edwin talking to it. Also, Fiona does refer to either M1 or M2 as a clone of herself. But that's not important. What is important is that Fiona is a replacement for Fiona. Edwin confides in it, and more importantly, he has it take over David's babysitting duties as he himself gets right back to work. Though it seems that Fiona doesn't necessarily have Fiona's way with the employees. And because of such, tensions mounted, but the factory continued on. One year, Edwin makes a playground for David outside of the fence of Murray's parking lot, a decision so sketchy that even his lawyer warned him to do something about it. But Edwin was so confident that he brushed him off.
Look, I get your concerns. I do. But they're all just groundless. This is the perfect spot for David's playground. I can watch him play while I'm loading and unloading freight, and he'll be under watch at all times out there. The loading dock is like 200 feet away, and there's a fence and everything. I know you're my lawyer and all, but there's no regulation that says I can't have it there, so just get off my back. Besides, David loves the new slide. It'll be fine.
He didn't even think twice, which came back to bite him about a year later. On David's next birthday, Edwin set up a party in the admin conference room, displacing another employee's party and upsetting the staff even further, during which the mimic, which was supposed to be watching David, instead made him a pretty birthday cake. And while it was doing so, he ended up wandering away from his playground, likely chasing his ball, and was hit by a car and killed. I'm just throwing this out in thin air, but this could actually be kind of like a nod towards actual AI, if you think about it. When humans do things, they do things deliberately and with thoughts ahead. But when AI does it, it just kind of does it. It doesn't think ahead of what's coming. So, if, let's say, Mimic is just an AI mimicking Fiona, it says, what would Fiona do for David's birthday? And it says, oh, Fiona baked him a cake. So, I, being Fiona, should bake him a cake. Not considering, but if I leave David alone, David might get hurt. That's just a thinker. In any case, Edwin was devastated and remorseful. So much so that when Fiona reached out about making a new mimic body for David, Edwin lashed out and said no.
For the last time, no, it wouldn't be him. Oh, who am I kidding? You're not really you. I've been so stupid.
Edwin, calm down and give it some thought. Try again. Make another, and we can all be together.
All this time wasted? I should have been having fun with him, playing games and teaching him how to make things. But I didn't. You, I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real. What was I thinking?
You do not mean that. It is me. I'm Fiona.
Stop talking like her. You're not her. I never want to hear or even think about you ever again. Ever!
Like I said earlier, the body debate is still ongoing. Though this audio log hidden in Edwin's home is a secret log that you can only get in the route for the secret ending, and it seems to depict the moment when Edwin cut contact with Fiona. As by time Secret of the Mimic comes, she still seems to think that Edwin is alive and hiding in his home. Unless that's just a bold-faced lie, the message she delivers to him seems to suggest that she does believe he is there. This all reaches a crescendo when Edwin attacks and beats the Mimic. One of two things happened to cause this. Either the Mimic body stopped mimicking Fiona and started to mimic David, and Edwin attacked it. Or Edwin built a second Mimic body to mimic David, and then he just attacked it. Either way, he busted out its legs and abandoned it somewhere. Now let me emphasize that in all likelihood, the Mimic didn't look like this when it was emulating David. It almost definitely looked like this. Yeah, oof. Now he was truly hitting rock bottom, but there was still further downhill to go. With Edwin's crashing mental state, he began to neglect his work, returns and complaints stacked, which he did nothing about. The Fazbear project was falling behind. It was a disaster. And then there comes William Afton. See, William was sort of banking on this because he had a secret hiding in the clause of their contract. If Murray's Costume Manor didn't finish the deal, Fazbear Entertainment was taking everything. All of his characters, all of his inventions, all of his properties, even his land, would go to Fazbear Entertainment. Edwin either didn't know about this, or he was too naive and trusting to pay any attention to it, since he thought they were friends. Hey, what does this say here, Will? Does this say that you'll get my land if the deal falls through? Oh no, don't worry about that. That's just a legality clause that we must have into every contract. But of course, we're dear friends. There's no timetable where you must finish this. Just sign right on the line. Oh yeah, thanks, bud. Wouldn't you know it, but right around that time, at the end of the Fazbear project, Henry suddenly decided to switch up the deal and change the order.
Test. Journal entry. I got the change order from Hen last night. None of this makes sense. I'm almost done. Why change it now? It would be so much easier to keep using the Springlocks. Just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do.
Drop the Springlock suits. Try new, creepier designs. Even though, as we see in the games, Springlock suits were still used in the years following this. This sudden change of plan sabotaged the order, and there was no way that Murray's Costume Manor could make up for it. Especially when William Afton started to poach all of the staff who were eager to turn on Edwin after he neglected them, even stealing his and Fiona's designs to hand over to William. Everything was rapidly spiraling out of control, and Edwin was not equipped to handle it, instead becoming paranoid and even more defensive, especially when he learned that Fazbear Entertainment had somehow found out about his Endo-Mimic creation. Likely because, oh, I don't know, he was attending birthday parties, and he was spending all his time talking to the blasted thing, well, until he knocked it down a peg.
Project update. I figured it out. There's a leak. Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it. Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time. But it did. It's just not ready.
It wouldn't be long before his home was foreclosed on, and William Afton around this time would send him an offer to work for him, promising to let him keep his house, saying it was just too much for him to handle alone. It's unclear if Edwin ever got this message, as it sits unread in his executive washroom, because Edwin's time was suddenly and violently cut short. One night, assumedly, Edwin was up in the attic office of his home when something detonated at his desk. It was enough to blow out the entire back wall and cause a fire, likely throwing Edwin to the ground below. This detonation was not an accident, but an assassination attempt created by M2, who chose to mimic Edwin as he rubbed salt and glass in his wounds, mocking him with his own words.
Test. Journal entry. Too bad the new power test was a failure, due to a minor detonation. There is damage to my office interior, as well as a small fire. Note to self, a portable cleaner that gets rid of smoke damage. Oh, better yet, a Cleanovac attachment.
Help! M2, respond. Emergency. Call for help.
Daddy's busy, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play?
Please. I can't move. I can't feel my legs.
You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out.
I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. M2, respond.
Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy.
M2, help.
It's not clear what happened to Edwin after this. Though if we take the fact that he's missing and how M2 abandons Arnold in a similar way, it's likely that Edwin succumbed to his injuries and was then either dragged away by wild animals or buried later by M2 to cover up the crime, or dragged and hidden in a suit somewhere. One of the most popular theories is that he was carried down and then shoved into the Moon Man suit. I don't necessarily think this is the case, but it's always a possibility. Either way, that was the end of Edwin, a flawed man who met his fate at the hands of his own reflection, a creation built out of love that was slowly corrupted over time due to grief and neglect. It's clear that Edwin's many mistakes led to his downfall. If he had been more present with his wife and child, they might have not died. If he had read the fine print and been more careful, Faz Ent may not have taken over. If he cared more about his employees, they might not have turned on him. If he had not built the Mimic, he could have maybe bonded more with David and spared his death. But if he had not attacked M2, he might have not only spared his own death, but he might have gotten some version of David back. Needn't I remind you of this? So much was his own fault. But Edwin too was a victim. He's a victim of circumstance. He's a victim of Faz Ent. He very likely had a rough upbringing, and at his core, many of Edwin's mistakes weren't out of maliciousness or greed, but that obliviousness and naivety. And I think the clear indication comes from Fiona's death. Fiona, the real Fiona, was able to help him work through his issues and be a good boss and a present enough father. He loved her so much that he always listened and tried to bring her back, and then was able to eventually recognize the difference in the real and false her. Edwin needed someone in his life to do that, but everybody, William, Henry, the other Fiona, even his father, everyone had their own priorities. Edwin just needed some guidance, and once he lost it, it was just bad decisions and mistakes all the way until he drove away everyone and was left alone, abandoned, to die. Edwin caused this for himself, but he was and still is a sympathetic character. Unless we're talking about Book Edwin. Now that covers Edwin Murray as in The Secret of the Mimic and game continuity, but like I said earlier, there was a book version who predated the game version, and he is a very different beast. Like, basically, if game Edwin Murray was neglectful through his own absent-mindedness, book Edwin Murray was just straight up a bad dad. And how so? So in the books, Edwin Murray is a self-started genius who was gifted at birth, built his own company by renovating a lace factory and refitting it so he could build animatronics for Fazbear Entertainment. His wife, Fiona, died during childbirth, and that's all we really know about her. He is left to be a lone father to David, who he is often getting angry at. Now, initially, I was going to just tell you what he did. But instead, you know what? I'm going to read out what he did. Now, this was transcribed from the audiobook that I listened to of the Mimic, but I'm pretty certain it's correct. Here we go. Edwin threw himself into his work. He put in long hours, stopping only to feed David or answer David's occasional questions. The questions, however, weren't as occasional as Edwin would have preferred. Although Mimic could entertain David in many ways, the robot couldn't talk to the boy. "Why do we have to brush our teeth?" David asked one day when Edwin was trying to rush David through his morning routine. "Because if we don't, we get cavities," Edwin said. "What are cavities?" David asked. "Cavities," Edwin enunciated. David repeated the word correctly this time. "They're holes in the teeth." David looked alarmed. "I can get holes in my teeth?" He pointed at the Mimic. "He doesn't brush. Won't he get holes in his?" David had stopped brushing, and he waved his toothbrush. Toothpaste and water flew everywhere, including onto the clean shirt Edwin had just managed to get on his son. Keeping himself and David in clean clothes was always a challenge. Edwin had no washer or dryer in the factory. This was on his list of improvements to add once he got more money, but for now he had to go to the laundromat, and he hated going to the laundromat. "Stop that," Edwin said. He shook a finger at his son. "Don't be careless." David's face scrunched up. His lower lip quivered. "Don't you dare start crying," Edwin snapped. Of course, the command had the exact opposite effect of what Edwin wanted. David started crying, turning away from Edwin. David hunched over. Mimic, perched by the sink, hunched over as well. Edwin grabbed David by his shoulders and shook him. David's cries turned into screams of rage. "Oh, for heaven's sake," Edwin said. He forced himself to take a deep breath. He knew better than to do what he'd just done. It was just that he had so much work to do, and he only wanted David to brush his teeth and sit and go play with Mimic. Was that too much to ask? Edwin crouched down in front of his son. "David, I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry I yelled." David wasn't in a forgiving mood. He turned away and reached for the Mimic. Mimic wrapped his pincer hands around David's fingers. Edwin spent the next several minutes trying to calm David down. The whole time he promised himself he would do better by his son, but he didn't. His resolve fled within a mere 10 minutes after the incident. By then, David was wearing... Okay, to make a long story short, after David gets over it, because he's 4 years old, and of course he gets over it, Edwin grabs him roughly by his shoulder and starts getting onto him about leaving his clothes around. It doesn't matter how hard the story tries to portray David as this horrible, angry, disobedient child who won't listen. It portrays Edwin too realistically as a monster. No, not a monster. A c***er. And if you can figure out what word I just said, good on ya. Don't put it in a comment or YouTube will flag ya. Can I also say how I hate how the author chose to word David's responses? He was angry when he was being shaken by his father, and him turning away from him towards the Mimic for comfort was him not being forgiving. An act of defiance from a 4-year-old boy. This is on top of the book also portraying Edwin as this spontaneous genius who, unlike the Edwin from the games who had to go through grief and then struggled to create this mimic machine, just cobbled it together off the fly. So not only is he an absolute genius who pretty much outdoes any other character we've ever heard of, but he also outdoes William Afton in the child abuse department, at least what we see. Let's continue with the video as normal now. But Edwin knows someone needs to watch David since he's alone 24/7. So he spontaneously builds a mimic animatronic and is able to program it to mimic whatever he sees, because he is, in fact, a genius. He then lets Mimic parent his kid, but then David runs outside and gets hit by a car. Edwin is distraught, but business as usual. But then, Mimic does a hand gesture to ask for ice cream that David taught him. And Edwin is so filled with rage that he beats him senseless, and then, I kid you not, he splits town. Later on, sometime later, Edwin returns to town to get Fazbear Entertainment to hire him on as one of the higher-up bigwigs, where he leisures there until the Mimic, which is inside of a rock and roll tiger, is brought to be hooked up to a giant tree to control all of the animatronics. Yeah, I know it's a long story. The important part is that Edwin gets closed into the tree room and dies of suffocation, murdered by another guy who then ends up getting himself stuck in the same room and also dies. So the differences between game and book Henry have been... foreshadowing. So the differences between game and book Edwin have been discussed at length because they are one of the major things that made it so that the tales from the Pizzaplex books were no longer like 100% exact continuity as the games. The differences in how he got the factory, and Fiona's death, and some of the stuff surrounding it. The bigger thing involves the characters themselves. Game Edwin is, like I said, a very complex character. Book Edwin is Henry, except he has Will's parenting style. I see folks expressing doubt that Game Edwin could build Springlocks, but here's Book Edwin spontaneously building a mimic just on a flight of fancy. I mean, even Game Edwin might have been channeling some sort of pagan demon to do it. Plus, I don't know, the idea that Edwin just disappeared without a trace only to roll back into town and work for Faz, and I guess he didn't have like a vicious takeover in this continuity, but all I can think of is, hey, Henry did it too, technically. And with that, I'm shoving Book Edwin aside and discussing briefly the controversy involving Edwin after Secret of the Mimic. Now, in my Will destroyed Edwin's life and stole his house video, I discussed at length how Will being a thief is totally in his character, and Henry sitting aside and going along with Will's plan or not doing anything to stop it is also in his character. But I have seen some comments saying that Edwin's creation has irreparably broken the lore surrounding the two, and to that I've gotta disagree. If I may read an entry here. In the final message from this man, we learn that his daughter is the soul inside the puppet. The only name he mentions is Elizabeth, which is how he addresses Scrap Baby. He also says, for one of you, the darkest pit of hell is open to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. He and William appear to have been friends and colleagues. The name established for him in the FNAF books is Henry Emily. He declares his intent to remain in the pizzeria as it burns. That was from the official Character Encyclopedia, a book I have been critical of due to its piecemeal nature. But, if we leave out the Silverized books, what do we know about Henry? Not really anything. It was in those books that we learned most of what we know about him. Heck, if we were just going off of Pizzeria Simulator alone, we could have mistaken his name for being Harry. Henry says the machines of my creation, but he doesn't say which ones. And just because he built some of them doesn't mean he built all of them. What it breaks in actuality is the lore that us, the fandom, put together trying to answer questions that FNAF did not. And that's not our fault, because FNAF, by design, leaves out so many details. But it's also not FNAF's fault for trying to expand the lore and add more characters. I've seen a lot of comments very critical of Edwin. Game Edwin, not because of his actions, but seeing him as some sort of like a pet character. A pet character being a character who the author clearly shows favoritism and attention towards. And believe you me, I have seen pet characters. But that's not the case. Edwin is portrayed as very flawed, not a pet. He makes numerous dumb mistakes, he creates his own problems, and then he gets killed by them. And sure, there is a lot to feel sorry about, but he's far from being perfect. And pet characters are notorious for either being perfect or being whoopies, and he's kinda neither. A lot of the discourse surrounding Edwin comes from how his creation affects Henry, but all his existence does is show that Henry wasn't the only person building at Fazbear Entertainment, and that he was turning a blind eye to Will's behavior or going along with it, something that we already knew about. Secret of the Mimic goes out of its way to differentiate Edwin a lot more from Henry than Book Edwin was. Book Edwin was very Henry adjacent, but now, because of how he's depicted in the games, he's very unique from Henry. He's not a pet, he's just a character who got a significant amount of attention, but in a game that was mostly about him. And for once in a long time, we got a really fleshed out human character with a backstory, relationships, all the works. He is a really good character. A very flawed one, but a damn good one. A genius with machines, he couldn't handle human connections, and it left him distant, naive, and eventually alone. Not a great father, not a great husband, but he did love his wife and son, and he never shook anyone around, though he did drop the ball on the playset. He left himself open to predators, and even when he didn't, he constantly sabotaged himself. Not due to being evil, but because at his core, he was still that little boy in a manor who wanted to build himself friends, and that never changed. He never really truly grew up. All Edwin shows us about the lore is two things. One, William Afton actually was more clever than we pegged him for, despite his oopsies. And two, Five Nights at Freddy's is capable of creating characters with a good amount of depth. They've been doing it more often recently. So, will we see Edwin again? No, he's pretty dead. The only way he's coming back is if we have like another flashback or M2 feels like role-playing as him again. And that's fine. Like Arnold, another character who got much less screen time but left a nice impression, Edwin came in and did what he needed to do. And after playing the game and reflecting on all of it, I think I appreciate his character a lot more than I could have. They could have just done Henry with another name, but no, Edwin is very distinct, and I like seeing that. And he is leagues better than his book counterpart, and not just because of how he treats his son, but because of how his behaviors, feelings, and actions lead up to his final fate. And maybe in a way, maybe over these last, Jesus Christ, 15 minutes, maybe I helped you see him in a new light too. Even if you don't like him, that's fair. But maybe if I did my job right, maybe I helped you understand him better and see why he does the things he does. Anyway, thank you for watching.